Hello and welcome to the Elevated Entrepreneur. I am your host, as always, Raylan Davis, and with me is my good friend, Chris Trew. Chris is a creative coach who uses this tool called Improv to help people improve their creativity. If he's working in corporate, doing corporate workshops, he's improving team building, creativity, productivity, all of the above. He's also working with individuals today. I'm going to be joined, obviously, by him, and we're going to talk some shit. So with that being said, what's up, Chris? Good to see you, brother.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here. What's up, Raylan? What's up, audience? Thank you so much for having me. Grateful, hype, ready to roll. Been in the locker room getting warmed up. I ran some sprints before the podcast, and I'm here. It's game day. Let's go.
Dude, by the way, it's been a kind of a long time coming because the more and more I talk to you, there's this cool thing we'll get into probably soon or later on, which is like this beautiful balance between like stoicism, improv, like this whole thing. But let's actually start with some basic stuff, right? So you obviously were are a comedian, currently still are a comedian, and a very funny man in and of itself. But then you started helping people like embrace improv through these workshops. Can you talk to me about like the journey of starting those? Like why in the world did you start doing those workshops?
Yeah, so whenever I started doing comedy, which is like 2004, when I started like really pursuing it, and took a couple improv classes because I was told that every comedian has like a foundation of improv. And my dream job actually was I wanted to be on a hidden camera show. I was like, I want that job. And I found out that all the people are improvisers. So it was like, okay, step one, take an improv class. What I didn't expect was for improv to have such a stranglehold over me as a creative person coming up in the world. And so I really took to it, and it never became just a tool for me. It became more of a lifestyle, and a way of being not only on stage but also in real life as a person, business person, whatever. And then I took a bunch of improv classes all over the world, and then I thought, man, I have my own version of this now. I have my own take on this that I'm not seeing taught in a lot of these, in LA, Chicago, New York, all these big places. So I just thought, let me throw my hat in the ring here. Let me explore becoming an improv teacher. And then very quickly that became just as important to me as being a performer. And so it's been a juggle since then of like being the comedian, but also the person who uses comedy to help others. But I love where I am right now. I'm very grateful for all the opportunities I've had and all like the ups and downs. But yeah, so it found me, and then I just ran with it.
And then obviously started helping people try to have had that same aha moment that you had, I would imagine.
Yeah, so what I discovered was in our improv classes, people at first, it's all the class clowns that come to you, and they're like, the funny one in the group of friends, and that's who the classes are. And as you're teaching, you're like, wait a minute, other people should be in these classes, not just comedians. And then it kept evolving from there. And then I saw people in classes who were not there to end up on stage, who were there because they wanted to get a leg up on leadership or sales or communication or whatever. And so I started focusing really heavy on that because there's more people who are not pursuing comedy than there are people pursuing comedy.
Yeah, that was kind of be the next question is when did the transition become like, hey, instead of just helping comedians, you help individuals? Because again, that's obviously how you and I got connected. When you joined the Elevated Coach Academy, it was like, okay, how can we turn this workshop into even bigger than it is now, and especially gearing it towards, like you mentioned, sales reps and coaching consultants. At what point do you go, oh wait, this could be a whole other business than just let's help some comedians learn improv?
Yeah, so it was pretty gradual for a long time because I've been teaching improv since like 2007, 2008, and it's been my primary source of income and my favorite thing to do since like 2011, 12. But it wasn't until, so it was pretty gradual, for a long time, a class, if there's 10 people in a class, it's like four of them were like, I'm not here for comedy, I'm here for leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And then like a few years down the line, it's like another seven or eight of them. So a few years ago for me, like right around 2019, 2020, I started investing more in finding those people for my one-on-one coaching, for my workshops. More businesses were bringing me in to teach their teams, no matter how big or small the business was. I started doing more of that. And since then, I'm careful to say I still do both. If anyone's listening out there that's like, well, I want to pursue comedy, it's like, I still do that. That's still a big part of what I do. But I have just gotten so much joy out of bringing this art form to people who are not expecting it to transform them as much as it has. So it's been the past couple of years to answer your question.
Well, I love the improv workshops, especially for the corporate, because you did a workshop for me for one of our workshops that we do for coaches. And what I love about it is that like it seems like an easy day. Like we're just gonna do improv. It's gonna be fun, which of course it is. But along the way, you like learn a lot about yourself and like getting uncomfortable. And then I think there's something that I wrote down, for a piece of content that I'll do. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, but essentially it was like I never. And again, I want to hear your thoughts on this, but like I never got over the fear of being found out or like the imposter syndrome. You don't get rid of it, in my opinion, at least for me anyway. That fear of standing out never goes away from me. The only difference now is I have way more trust in myself that I'll figure it out eventually, and I feel like that's improv. It's like I don't think you ever not are afraid to get in front of a crowd. But you have way more trust in yourself to know, I don't know what the circumstance is going to be or the situation, but I am confident enough to know that I'll find something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So another way of putting that is improv really helps you trust and glorify and celebrate the process. Because I tell people all the time, if you want to know every step of the way this is going to go, then you have to write a script and follow the script to a T. And of course, you can convince me that there are some benefits to that, but improv, like, that's not the way life is.
Yeah.
Like things rarely go as planned, whether it's a business, a relationship, your day, your haircut, the book you're reading, your hobby, whatever. It's like it's rare that something goes exactly as planned. So what if there was a way for you to train yourself to accept that things change, and not only to accept them, but to celebrate that and be excited to roll with the punches. And there's there's books you can read, there's calendars that have inspirational quotes that you can get, but improv, I think, is the primary tool that helps you feel comfortable in the unknown. And it basically just arms you with these skills to be like, I know things. I know I can't plan every step of the way of this thing, but I'm going to be as prepared as possible, and I'm ready to accept what happens. And again, that goes for projects, relationships, vacations. I mean, name something that could go wrong. And of course, I'm using air quotes for wrong, because improv also teaches you this actually isn't wrong. It's just changing it up a little bit. So let's accept that and move on.
It just is what it is. And again, that's why I like, and again, I think you and I hit it off so well, especially when we first started working together, because I understand improv even though I've never done it, because that's what MMA is. You have a certain amount of skill sets within these various different things. They're tools, but then when you go to the stage, so to speak, right? When you go to fight, there is no script. Hey, this is going to work this way. With the famous quote Mike Tyson says, like, everyone has a plan to get punched in the face. Like, yes, there is no script in MMA. It's very much like jazz, like improv. So again, when you were telling me, when I was learning more and more about improv from you, there were so many parallels between sports, athletics, entrepreneurship, and then also life, which is like kind of partly what I wanted to discuss with you. This is my favorite thing to discuss with you, period, is this idea, once again, of stoicism, this idea of surrender. And the biggest aha moment for me when I finally got what you are actually doing, and of course, like the overarching thing is like, yes, I'm teaching the skill of improv. Okay, fine. But this underlying thing that we're really teaching with improv reminded me when I was reading the book Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And it was this idea of surrendering to what is, and I was like, oh my God, like, he's a sneaky little shit. He's actually teaching people how to live a better life and let go of bullshit and then actually embrace what's happening in the moment. And he's just doing it through this more fun way, which is called improv. And I would argue that you're kind of, you're a way better looking, more articulate, funny version of Eckhart Tolle, Tony Robbins, these types, right? Like I would put you up there with them.
Well, that is high praise, and I'm adding it to my bio right now,
As,
my testimonials right
as you
now.
should. Better
Yeah, I
looking,
mean
funnier
you're right.
version of Eckhart Tolle. That goes to the bio.
You're totally right about like the sneakiness of improv because so many people I'd actually say this is one of my biggest challenges as an entrepreneur,
Hmm.
if I'm being honest, because one of the biggest challenges I have is I need more people to understand that this is not about exclusively the comedy side of it. Now, yeah, I mean, someone hires me to be their coach, a business hires me to bring in and do team building. I promise you, you're going to come out the other side of this funnier and with a better understanding of comedy formulas, and we're going to laugh a lot. But that is not the reason why you're bringing me in. You're bringing me in to improve presence, listening, communication, diffusing conflict, brainstorming. And I'm just so lucky that with my comedy background, that these things actually are all woven together because that's what we do in an improv comedy show. It's the same thing that we do in an improv comedy show helps these companies and these individuals, these entrepreneurs. But it's such a challenge, Raylan, because it's like some people hear about what I do and they say, well, we'd rather go do a ropes course for team building. We don't need to do comedy. No one here wants to do comedy. So I'm like, it's not it's not comedy. It's like a side effect. It's a
Yeah.
byproduct of it, which is again one more minor tangent. But that's why I'm inspired by and also equally puzzled by this need to rebrand what improv is
Hmm.
because so many people are like we don't need the comedy guy for in our seminar. I'm like, well, it's not that. I'm on this lifelong mission of like trying to rebrand improv or repackage it in a way so that these companies understand that I'm not coming in and doing a comedy show for you. I'm actually doing some really deep, emotional, um, really just like transformational coaching that just so happens to also be funny.
Well, that's why I like that word of transformation. Like I have a mentor of mine. I think you and I just talked to him before, but his name's Shane, and he talks a lot about this idea of transformation. And he's like, it's the opposite of self help. Like self help starts with the premise that you are broken, and then oftentimes, if you start with that in your premise, you also find that in your conclusion. And he says what he does is
Mm,
transformation, which is that you are not broken. It starts with the premise that you have everything you need to be successful. That's where the five laws of Elevated came from. Was him, and so that's kind of what you're doing. Is like it's not self help. It's how do you kind of get your power back? Like how do you realize that you're the source to all of the good things and as well as all the bad things that happen to you, right? You're the source. And so what I find interesting again about the rebrand, first of all, I know that very well because there's another thing that we're doing with the sales coaching we're doing. It's like we're trying to rebrand the idea of a sales manager to a sales coach. And it's very difficult for people to understand. And so it's this interesting thing of okay, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Meaning like the best way to do it is to get people that have been to the workshop to go, here's the results. Like, here's what happened to me. I thought it was going to be this. It was not this. It was that. But then in order to get those people, we have to, do we bait them in with the comedy, but then like sneak in the broccoli, so to speak, and go, hey, by the way, this is really good for your life? Or do you somehow, again, find a way to rebrand it in a way that goes, oh, again, like I was jokingly saying, like, the improv, and I think when we first started working together, I said, improv isn't what you do, that's just the tool. What you actually do is this empowerment thing. And the more that we can get closer to, hey, like, understanding like the actual problems and going, okay, well, what's the benefit of improv? It's actually the fact that again, you can take life for what it is and then make the most out of it. And I think what would be interesting too is go more towards like this idea of like, hey, you've read every self help book, you've done this, you've done that. Why not at least try something new called have fun, like laugh? It's called improv. Try
yeah.
this. Like, hey, fucker, you tried everything else, it didn't work. Try this. Hey, you've been in therapy for 15 years, you're still like miserable. Come laugh about it at least. you know.
Yeah, totally. And I think hearing you say it that way too, it's a nice reminder that it's like I don't actively want to eliminate the comedy aspect of this because it's like
It's also
the sneaky
healing.
strong suit of
It's
it.
important.
Yeah, yeah, and and everyone. I mean, humor is so vital in so many walks of life. I mean, from again, I can go down that same list like relationships, entrepreneurship, leadership. It's like having a good sense of humor is very beneficial to thriving in those
Well, it's a skill
departments.
set
And
too of
so
like perspective. Like, sorry to cut you off, but it's like what I think that you do that's like so amazing to me is it's like even how do you laugh at some of the worst things that could happen to you? Because if you can laugh at even the worst things that's happened to you, you now are in control of. Again, that's just the outcome, right? Laugh at things that are bad. But what is the actual skill of the mechanism? It's reframing. It's perspective. And you have people like Brene Brown telling people how to, reframe situations, and their way is boring. But if you do improv, it's way more fun, and you get to reframe. You know what I mean? Like it's the same shit. It's just your version of it is a way more enjoyable. It's kind of like there are people that lose weight by going running, by lifting weights, doing all that. And then there's people that lose a shit ton of weight. Back when, remember DDR, Dance Revolution? There were people that lost like
yeah,
hundreds of pounds doing DDR, but they were having way more fun. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of like how I look at it.
that's a really great way of putting that. I love that. Yeah, and to go backwards a little bit, it's one of my favorite improv exercises that I made up from from reading so much about Stoicism. But we had this exercise called Good Because.
Mm.
So it's like one person shares some bad news, some allegedly bad news, right? Air quotes for the listeners, bad news. One person shares some bad news, and the other person says why that's actually good. And that to me is the ideal improv exercise because yes, we're working on thinking quick on our feet in the moment. We're also practicing accepting
Mm-hmm.
reality, and we're also working on a big picture and process. And it's like, okay, well, what is good about me getting a flat tire right now? And we use creativity to practice accepting these things and making it something interesting, as opposed to that can only be bad. That can only be bad that my tire is flat. It's like, well, what if it wasn't? And improv really untangles that for a lot of people. There's someone listening right now who was like, who maybe you're thinking, I don't know how that could ever be good. And it's like, well, you might be my ideal student because I can help you untangle that and have fun with it. Now, the real life application I know is more difficult. Like in real life, you get a flat tire. I'm not expecting you in that moment to go, well, good, because there may have been a dragon down the interstate that was going to, whatever. Like, I understand that. But it does help you make these subtle, nuanced changes to how you operate as a human.
Well,
It helps you
there's like a neural
be
pathway.
happier more
Well,
consistently.
there's a neural pathway that they haven't unlocked yet. There's a door that they haven't even seen yet. But by doing the extreme of like the dragon under the underpass thing, that's a doorway they've never actually opened. I want to throw in. You don't have to change the name of your exercise, but I do want to throw in another name for it, which is called the Jocko Willink. Do you ever see that YouTube video? And he's like, "Yeah, this happened to you. You got fired. Good. No one's buying your this. Good." Like it just means you have more opportunity to get better. Like he's like everything that goes wrong, good. So anyway, that's another one. You could call it the Jocko Willink.
Yeah, I totally can. I love that. I love that.
But that tell me like that is in my opinion, when we're talking about entrepreneurship, like that is the key indication whether or not someone's going to be successful, in my humble opinion, right? Which is, can you take a situation and then turn around and make it as best as humanly possible? Like I'll be super honest because by the time this comes out, the event will be over. So the event, we have this workshop that we have coming up, and again, by the time this releases, it'll already be over. But the intention was to sell out 30 tickets to this event. It's the first one we've ever done. And it was this interesting experiment, Chris, because every entrepreneurial event is based around come, network, we're going to yell and clap and all get excited and pumped up. And then when you leave, you have more shit to do than you came in with. And you're not going to do any of it, but at least you were motivated. and at least you have a bunch of pictures making you look like you met some people, right? That's the event space. And again, I am hating a little bit, but they do make a shit ton of money, so I can't hate too much. So we said, okay, what if we did this workshop where you come for 2 days and you did the fucking work and you left with those things done? If a speaker comes and speaks, and you know how our workshops work, but speaker comes to speak for 20 minutes, 40 minutes is doing the work so that we can leave the thing done. Anyway, we launched, we ran ads. I spent $20 or $30,000. I stopped counting at one point because I was like, I can't look anymore. But like I think I spent 20 or 30,000, and I think I'm gonna lose 15 of it at least. So what most people would do is either A, not run the event, or B, run the event and go, never doing this again. I learned my lesson. And for me, and again, this is what I mean by like accepting what is, but then choosing what you're gonna do, not based on a fear, but whatever, and going, we said, you know what, we end up discounting the tickets for the first one. Was number one. And then number two, we are packing it full of our current clients, whatever. And then this is our opportunity to get as much video as possible and change like the people that do come their lives. And then now that becomes a sizzle reel for the next go around. And so what was interesting was I think my team was a little bit surprised because they were like, I said, yeah, we're doing this and this. And then they're like, okay. And then I said, and then in 6 months we do it again. They're like, you want to do this again? And I was like, you know how much data we've collected? Like, this is like, listen, anytime you do something for the first time, it's not going to be amazing. It's just not. And especially too, when you're doing something unique, like we are, like, again, the problem that we were having, and I think we solved for it, but the problem we had was that, again, I was selling Chris hard work. Who wants to do that? Like literally my ad, I don't know if you saw it, but it was like, my ad was literally like, for 2 days, you're working your ass off. But so anyway, my point is though, like, and granted, there's still, you don't really make money on those events. Like it literally, if one of the people that come to the event end up becoming a client, it pays for the whole thing. So it's like, it is what it is. But my point is though, that like most people, something goes wrong, they can't look at it and learn the lesson, and they also can't have that, okay, but what good came out of this that I could learn from, etc. And because they don't have that resilience, they fail as entrepreneurs, not because they don't have the information, but it's usually simply because they didn't have the ability to look at it differently and reframe that, which is, again, is what you fucking teach people, that's why, like, you have one of my favorite offers that are out there.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, it's thank you, but it's startling how many people don't go for a round two or don't like take a second shot at whatever the dream is. You know, it's one of the reasons why I love sports. You know, because it's like it's not a 1 game season. It's like you lost this game. There's 81 more basketball games. You know, it's like let's learn, let's adapt, let's adjust, let's do it again. It's why I love performing improv shows, because it's like we have an hour. You know, it's like the first scene's not great. It's like, well, I could get hung up on that, or I could adjust and go back in. I'm glad you're already planning round two, because I want to be there.
Of course you will.
Selfishly.
Yeah, of course you will. But yeah, like I think that again, like I was talking to someone about this yesterday, but I said, you know, my secret to success has always been, no matter what I do, is that I'm too stupid to know I can't do something. Like, if you go into it with that ignorance of like, no, I can do it. Like, there's literally nothing that I think about that I'm like, I could never. No, I could if you paid attention long enough. But the problem is people don't see it through long enough. Like, you could be a great comedian, maybe not great, but like a good comedian if you dedicated, you know, a long period of time and did a lot of practice. You could look at your world a lot differently and be happier day to day if you did improv, like these workshops, and did the one-on-one coaching with you. If you did that and you learned the skills and you practiced it day in and day out, yes, you could even get really good at that. And I think what's interesting, and again, what I love about your offer and like what you do for people on the especially when it comes to like the individual side, let's just take like entrepreneurship, because again, most of the listeners, you know, in some way, shape, or form are trying to be an entrepreneur. You know, they have a side hustle. If you constantly are looking at things and saying, man, the world isn't fair. Or we all know those people that everything they do they have a fucking excuse, Chris. Like, you know, this didn't work out because, and then excuse. But again, like if you are able to look at the world and go, oh no, this stuff started happening for me. That's why, again, like I've heard about yes and, but you really taught me a lot when I met you about the principles of yes and that's what it is. It's the acceptance, and here's something else. Like let's keep it going, and I think again, you know, what's so important. But I guess for you on your journey, because you've been on an entrepreneur for a little bit now, like what do you feel like has been something that's been difficult for you and lessons learned along the way for you that you've had to your way out of it? You like how I came back to that, and you like how I did that?
Yeah, well, I want to also say for anyone listening slash watching that doesn't know what yes and is, real quick. So, like in improv, we have a foundational rule guideline that's called yes and. So yes, comma and. The idea is that when you yes and someone, you are accepting what they said to you as their truth. That's the yes, and the and is you building off of it. So when Raylan says this whole conversation has essentially been us yes anding. Every good conversation you've ever had has been essentially a yes and. So when Raylan says, hey, I like your new haircut, Chris, I go yes, and yes, and I love it too because I have a photo shoot this week for a magazine cover. He's like, yes, and I'm gonna buy that magazine because you're on the cover. It's like we just build, build, build as opposed to just saying it looks good, thank you, end of conversation, right? So that's the spirit of yes and. To go back to your question, Ray, I mean, I have learned so much because I definitely stumbled into this as a business. Like I've run brick and mortar theaters and comedy clubs that taught improv and did shows, and so much of it, was learning as I go. But kind of what you said, maybe I don't want to I don't want to call myself stupid, but maybe maybe I was too stupid to know that it was too early to do these things. I didn't know I couldn't do this yet. But it's like, but you just you just learn on the fly and you adapt, and you be humble enough to know that there's better ways to do it and you can learn. And so yeah, I mean, I guess that's just my answer is like just is I learned to yes and myself through all the failures, just like it's okay that X didn't work. All that what really matters is that I come back for Y. If I don't do Y, then the X beat me, and that's like the ultimate failure. So it's that classic, is that the Wayne Gretzky thing, like you miss, or is it Michael Jordan? I don't know, some
Some sports
some
person said,
some
yeah.
perfect athlete. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And yeah, so I have learned to give myself some grace, with those failures, and to be okay with things not going right. And improv basically taught me that, because there's no way for 100% of my improv scenes to be perfect.
How do you mean giving yourself grace? This has been something that you and we have another buddy of ours that's in the academy named Anthony that more than ever not help me, had me started to think about what does it mean to give someone grace, give yourself grace. And the reason why um, this has been an interesting like thing to talk about for me is that in wrestling and in like MMA, there is no give yourself grace. It's you just get back in, like you just go and do the thing. And so what's interesting is like people like let's just take MMA as a concept, right? So you lose your fight. It's important. So there's the idea of giving yourself grace, but then that gives you the excuse, it gives you the out. Like versus I've looked at it because again in wrestling, especially when I first started, it wasn't as good as obviously when I stopped wrestling, right? But like my last year, I think it was like 50-1 or something, like, yeah, 50-1. But when I first started, like my freshman year, I was like 20-20. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't that great. But you learn to just accept what is. So it wasn't that, and I didn't know that's what I was doing, but it wasn't like, oh, I feel it's okay that I lost. It was more so like I lost, period. Now what? So I'm just curious, like, what do you mean by give yourself grace?
Yeah, so for me, giving myself grace is like making sure that I give myself credit for showing up and for attempting to do it, and just having the presence of mind to know it's a long game. It's like this is a part of the long game here. So mostly that, it's like giving myself the credit. It's not letting myself off the hook when something goes wrong. I'm not like, have grace, it's okay. It's like, no, you have to learn from those things and stay present and absorb. You really take the L's, really like absorb the defeats and the lessons you learn. But it's like you can't let the fact that you lost take over, like take the place of the fact that you showed up and learned something. So that's what I mean by grace. It's like patience. Being patient with the process, and really like shame on me if I assume the process is a predetermined length of time. It's like I don't know. Like it's like I can't say like, oh, I'm going to take these improv classes for 1 year and then I'm going to be a famous comedian. It's like I gotta give myself grace for showing up and doing that. Turns out that I needed to do it for longer. Turns out that wasn't my end game, or turns out whatever. So I think when you combine work ethic with grace and with something like improv, you get someone who is open minded about where this journey will take me. Will definitely put in the work to get there, and we'll have a fun time while doing it.
Yeah, because I was like, I like the, by the way, that you mentioned the long game, because again, there's no, again, I make this mistake a lot, which is thinking that there's a end, or that like there's a race, like there's a time limit to where I could go. And so I like the idea of grace being just that you give yourself credit for what you did and then you just continue on. And the reason I even asked you that was just because there's a lot of terms we throw around kind of, and it's like, I have an issue with some words because it gives people, like, if they don't know that's what you mean, it gives people the idea that like, oh, I can just give myself off the hook. For like another one that's like interesting like that, like give yourself grace is one, oh, your feelings are valid. I don't know what it is. I have a friend that's a therapist, and I literally called her one night. This is recently, and I'm gonna have her on the podcast too. But I literally was like, please explain to me this fucking idea that feelings are valid, because I don't understand it. And she was like, well, and she's like, we're just going back and forth on it. And I go, no, here's the problem. I know what you mean. When other people hear this, they think it means my feelings are fact. And that's my problem. Because now, and especially, dude, let's talk about this in comedy. It's a fucking problem these days, because people are like, oh, that hurt my feelings, or that made me feel a certain way, so Chris is bad because that was a bad joke and whatever, versus like, no, that's not what it means. I don't think, like, at least, or just don't use it anymore. Like, your feelings are not valid. Like, you have feelings and they made you feel a certain way, but it doesn't mean that like your thought process is correct. Like me and my fiance Kayla, Kayla, go back and forth this all the time. And in a good way, but she'll be like, this hurt my feelings, and I literally, this is why I think maybe like my past life, maybe I was a robot, because I'll be like, okay, I understand your feelings, and I'm sorry you feel that way, but let's talk about the logic that goes behind this, and because those two things are not, that doesn't make sense. And she's like, and then she would go back and forth like, no, my feelings are valid. I'm like, okay, but are they though? Like, who's like, because I feel this way, you feel this way. But neither one of them fucking matter when it comes to what actually happened, like reality. So I don't know. It's just one of my pet peeves. I fucking hate that.
Yeah. Well, it's like I think what, if I take a stab at what people might mean by that, it's like you are right that it is true that you have a right to feel that way. That is true. But it doesn't mean you're right. It's like, it doesn't mean that that other people have to bend to that. It's like, if your feelings are hurt, then that's just the truth. And now your feelings are hurt, and you are responsible for that. I'm not responsible for that. You are. So like, you can tell I'm responsible to like listen to you and to acknowledge that is true, but I'm not responsible for anything else. Like, you feel that way.
It's so hard to like, oh my God.
Not me. If I make you feel that way, then I apologize. But that can't go much further than that. And to mush all this together in a way, it's like my feelings are valid is kind of like the yes and yes and. It's like yeah, like I'm not, like, I acknowledge that you feel that way. That I acknowledge that is your truth right now. but it's not more than that.
Yeah.
It's like that's all
Well,
it
what's
is.
funny is I never realized this, but when me and like Kayla get in arguments, which so spoiler alert, we actually do get in arguments. We've been together 3 years. We're getting married. Yeah, we do still have arguments. Like I feel like I do yes and accidentally, and I'll say this like because I'll be like what you did this and it made me upset, but and it's not like a yes and, but it's like but I acknowledge that that's my bullshit though. So like that you didn't make me feel that way. I have this feeling, you triggered it, and I have some shit in my background, so that's not on you. I just want to put it out there that I am feeling this way. But if we can be honest, that's not a you problem. That's a me problem. I just want you to acknowledge that like you brought it up for me. So thank you. So like but that's such a weird way of arguing cuz it's like who does that? Like I mean, it's like there's so many times even with clients or just anybody in your life, relationships in general, people will get mad at you and say, you made me feel this way. But no one ever goes, okay, hold on a second. But why does it affect you so much? Like there's this, because we're talking a little bit of stoicism and all these things. There's this guy named Sadhguru. Hey, do you know who Sadhguru is? He's the, I'll send you some of his stuff, dude. His stuff is
No.
like really, really phenomenal. Well, he's like an actual guru, like, from India, like, one of those. And
Uh-huh.
he goes, if, for example, you're cussing me out in English, it may hurt my feelings. It may make me feel very angry. But imagine you're, talking badly about me in a different language. I have no idea what you're saying. So I can go on and have a great life. Like it's not going to affect me at all. So what's the difference? It's just how we perceive it. It's just like our understanding of the words, and then we take that in as our own. And so it comes down to like how you feel about something is a choice. And it's funny because again, there's a bit of a language barrier. But he goes, nobody can freak me, which is hilarious to me because what he means is like nobody can make him upset because he's in control of himself. And again, like I think I'm obsessed with just skill sets in general. Improv to me is a skill set. Self mastery of like how you think and how you perceive the world. All these things are like I'm obsessed with, including the tool obviously of improv, because it's like, yo, if you can allow the universe and the people around you to dictate how you feel every day, that's a fucking miserable life. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah. And that's probably most people, right? Yeah. What are we doing here? For sure. And that is I mean, there's many of them, but that alone is a really great reason to study and practice improv consistently is to prevent that from happening.
Yeah, I think again, it's one of those interesting things that I think most people don't know what freedom actually means. Like freedom of just to not be inundated with other people's bullshit and have that dictate. And so I
Yeah.
again, not to keep, drilling down improv, but I think if you can just let things flow through you like improv allows you to do, things get a lot easier. Like I don't know where I picked this up, but I either I made up this quote, and if I did, like, dude, it's the best quote ever it came up with, or I stole it from somebody else. But it's essentially it's the man who can say it is what it is and mean it is the most powerful man in the world. It is what it is and they
Mm.
mean it. Because a lot of us say it is what it is, but we don't mean it. Like we low key be a little upset about shit. But I feel like again, just imagine being on that stage or being in
Yeah.
one of your workshops and somebody says something to you, and like if you fight it, this is what it feels like, Chris, and tell me if I'm onto something. It feels like if you did improv, someone says something to you, and if you have any resistance, you can't access the creativity for the next thing. Oh my God, I can't believe Chris said this. Well, guess what? I'm worried. I'm thinking about that resistance and I have no access to the creativity. That's fucking life, man. If we spend all this time resisting,
Yeah. So basically what that is, what I would say to that in my world is like that's judging, you're judging the moment. And what makes you or anyone an expert on this moment. Like it's being created as we speak. So it's like so if you spend time judging the moment, you're preventing momentum from happening. You are denying my ability to build and and you are inviting the potential of conflict. And all those things uh, suck away creativity and energy. So it's like, in what universe is that good? So it's like, again, just like the example I gave earlier of the flat tire on the interstate, I know it's hard. I know it's hard to not judge to not judge the moment, but like that's reason 12,680 why improv is such a great tool for entrepreneurs. Uh, because entrepreneurs, I think, invite more stress in their life typically because the long hours and how creative you have to get and thinking on the fly and problem solving. It like improv is great for you because it teaches you how to not judge every single moment, how to let some things happen and build off of them. It's the long game. It's not just the here right now, it's the long game. So don't judge every single moment. It will slow you down. So like you're right, Raylan. Me and you were doing an improv scene. If I think, man, that was a bad move Raylan just made, or I wouldn't have done that, or what was he thinking? Suddenly I'm in my head and I'm not in this moment and it slows us down.
So recently, I've been doing more podcasting, not just my own podcast, but I tried to get in about 5 podcasts a month of other people's stuff because I'm trying to practice it more, and I've kind of realized for me, short form content's whatever, and I do it, but I'm more of a long form guy. Like, let's just talk and do whatever. So anyway, I started doing other people's podcasts, and I was doing a podcast. And on that note, like I said something, and immediately after in my head, I was thinking like, why the fuck did I say that? Like, that made no fucking, like, what is wrong with me? And then he asked another question. And then literally I was like, wait, I was in my head about what I had already said that I missed completely the next part. Instead of just accepting, okay, I said it, okay, whatever, move on, and then let's go on to the next thing. And so it's funny because how many times these things show up. Okay, I want to kind of wrap on the next like 10 or so minutes on this. Did you see this? I don't know if you saw this, but the new Nobel Peace Prize that basically disproves a small portion of Einstein's work. That basically it says this is that the universe is not locally real, and so what that means is, remember that saying: if a tree falls in the forest, if nobody's around to hear it, does it make a sound? So it proves that it does not make a sound. Things only grow or move or whatever if it's perceived, and that's it. So why is this significant and why I'm fascinated by it? It's because quantum physics is the greatest key to proving that that manifestation's real. Because isn't that
okay?
I think, and this is for the non like people that like I'm not talking about like the patchouli wearing like manifestation. I'm talking about like real manifestation, right? Like you put activity. By the way, it was a joke. You know what patchouli is? That really gross smelling. You know what I mean?
I'm with you.
So anyway, so to me, it has always been that activity. To me, manifestation is activity produces activity, right? You put your focus on something and it grows. And what's interesting again about like quantum physics is that the woo is starting to have science behind it, which is the weirdest. Like, it's just what fucking world do we live in? Is my point, I think, Chris. Like, it is literally insane. So they do this thing where, and again, was it Bohr? It was Bohr versus Einstein. Einstein believed. By the way, guys, I am not a fucking physicist. Don't listen to anything I'm saying right now. Like, I learned this shit on YouTube. So this guy named Bohr basically believed that the universe wasn't real and that two properties of the same kind separated by an eternity of universe, if one thing happens to one thing, it will happen simultaneously to the other. And then Einstein was like, nah, bruh. And this is, by the way, like, this is the exact translation of what they said. Einstein was like, nah, bruh. Like, that's not how it works. Like, it doesn't work like that. Like, if a tree makes a fucking sound if it crashes, regardless of who's around. And it turns out they proved that's not, prove is a strong word, but essentially they got a Nobel Peace Prize for giving a lot of evidence to support the fact that essentially that manifestation in a lot of ways is kind of real, meaning like whatever you focus on grows, or it exists, it's real. Anyway, how about that for a fucking weird thing I brought up today? You learn something new every day.
Well, guess what? Well, Raylan, I think that people like us may have manifested that manifestation. Like we manifested that manifestation works. Because while other people are manifesting money or love or career, we're manifesting itself. And so it just in the end, I think we
I
deserve
would
the
agree.
Nobel Prize. People like us. Actually, the whole Elevated Academy. It's like the manifesting manifestors.
Dude, like
So it's like
again,
we
I
are the
thought it was all
bedrock for
bullshit.
this whole
For the
thing.
long, I was like, don't talk to me about manifestation. Like, shut the fuck up, right? And then Kayla is the one that got me really interested more into it, as well as okay. So here's okay. So obviously, I listen to Kayla all the time. I want to make sure that's clear to everyone. She's my future wife. Of course, I listen to her. But a mentor of mine, okay, Shane, who I mentioned earlier, he was talking to me about energy and frequency and all these things, right? And I remember thinking, man, this is weird. But then I remembered the dude's like a multimillionaire. And so I was like, okay, so because there's something about,
Uh huh.
like, no offense to anyone listening to this. Actually, no, you can take offense. I don't really give a shit. But like, if you are this like crystal loving, like manifest, but you're broken, unhappy in your life, I do not want to hear from you. Do not care, right? The proof's in the pudding. But when I hear these people that are like, no, I manifested my life and here's how I did it. And by the way, I'm like a multimillionaire. Oh, and by the way, not only am I a multimillionaire, but I'm at peace in my life. Like I have true peace and contentment in my life. Is that the word? Contentment? You're content, right?
Yeah.
Then I'm like,
Yeah.
then I'm interested. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, well, let's talk about it. And so anyway, like this world is so interesting to me because it's like for a meathead like me, you have to remember, like going back to sports, in wrestling, we take what's ours. I'm taking that double leg. Like I'm going to take you down, try to stop me. But then when I got into jiu-jitsu is more like manifesting in a way, and that like no, it's improv. It's like I'm gonna try this. If it doesn't work though, I got some other stuff. So let's just see where this goes. And it's a totally different world. So anyway, I'm really just brought that up to see if anybody else thought that was interesting other than me because it's fucking fascinating.
Oh, I think it definitely is. And to be clear, I'm into all that world. Like I love. I heard someone else. This is not my saying, but Caitlin Quinn, I think is her name. She says like combining the
Mm,
woo and the work, and I really love that. It's like yeah, I want to combine the woo with the work. Like that's the kind of person I want to be, and so I believe in that stuff as well. But I also don't believe in. I also believe in following it up with with
yeah, like it's just
sweat.
I think having the right focus on something obviously makes it grow, but also it's like I think most people are manifesting the wrong shit in their life. It's like if I constantly, the best way I could articulate is like if I'm constantly thinking the universe is out to get me, I'm going to find evidence to support that narrative. Versus if it's
Yes,
just like no, the
for
universe is
sure.
working for me. Listen, man, Elon Musk is living in a fucking simulation, okay? And Elon Musk, talk about manifesting, like he does the work, but he's like, no, I'm doing this. Like this is just, and he find evidence to support that he should be doing it. And it's just like we all do it. It's just, is it working for you and whatever. And the moment that I started opening my eyes a little bit to it, more to it, towards it was Kayla's like, I've been saying this thing in the morning, which is like, how does it go? I tried it, but it did the opposite effect, and probably because I'm like still like not really a believer. But so Kayla was doing this thing where she would say, I'm ready, I'm ready to receive a new client, and I'm so glad that they're like this. She would talk it into his existence, and again, I was like, Kayla, you're fucking weird. And then like that day we had like three really big opportunities happen, and I was like, I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing that shit. like just go ahead and keep it up. Like it's working, I think. Like whatever. It's just again, it's just one of those interesting things. But anyway, dude, this has been fun. We got to do this more often. And again, we got to get together in person, man. I was bummed, but you got a huge festival coming up, obviously, that I want you to talk about. Again, we'll try to get this out sooner than because it's what next weekend, right?
Yeah, it's November 8th through 14th. I know this
Yeah.
podcast will already be out, but it's the biggest comedy festival in the Gulf South. It's called Hell Yes Fest, and there's just people from all over the country coming in. It's mostly based out of the comedy club I'm a part of, but we have multiple other venues all around the city of New Orleans, and it's a big, fun, productive event, and I'm looking forward to it, and I'm happy it's back
Mm.
after a 2-year hiatus, and Yeah.
Again,
Hell
we
yes,
do this
does.
again too, because we didn't even get a chance to get into like the comedy stuff. Because I'm always like I'm pretty interested in. I'm not funny, but I am like really interested in the skill set of comedy in and of itself. Because again, there's a lot of insights from even making content, just writing material, drilling it, and then doing it. Imagine how much better your content would be if you do the same kind of premise. So we got to do this again soon, dude. This is fun.